My name is Margaret Hale. I'm 65. And this morning, I polished the good silver because I wanted my house to sparkle when the people I love walked through the door. The lemon oil still softens my palms. I'm stirring a pot of marinara when my phone buzzes across the counter like a trapped fly. "Hey, Mom," my daughter says. Anna's voice is bright, practiced, the kind of cheer that sits on top of something colder. "Listen, about tonight." I lower the flame and wipe my hands on the striped towel I bought for birthdays, red for luck, white for fresh starts. The window over the sink shows a slice of ocean, calm as a held breath. "We're not coming," she says. "Don't be upset. It's just, we did something big." A laugh, tight as a knot. "We bought a ring for Miles's mom. 20,000. She deserves it." The spoon slips from my fingers. Sauce freckles the stove. I steady the pot before it tips, but the coffee mug beside it skates off the edge and breaks on the tile. One hard crack, like a verdict. "Anna," I say, and my name for her hovers in the steam. It's my 65th. I know. Softer now. You get it, right? She's been everything. Sometimes I wish she'd raised me. There's a clock in the hallway that ticks like a distant shoe in a hospital corridor, steady, merciless. I used to walk those halls after double shifts, promising myself that love would be enough if I just kept giving it. "Okay," I say. My voice doesn't wobble. I reach for the burner and turn it off. The house exhales. "I'll swing by later," she adds. Quick, as if a scrap of courtesy can stitch the tear. Maybe drop something off. After the line goes dead, the kitchen holds its breath with me. Tomato and basil warm the air. I kneel, gather the mug's white teeth into my palm, and press them to the trash bag's lip. When I stand, the window has darkened to a sheet of pewter. I set one plate on the table anyway tonight, light a candle, and wait to see what my silence will say that my words couldn't. That night, the house felt larger than it had ever been. Every corner echoed as though it were reminding me that no one was coming. The table in the dining room stood ready, set for 6, though the chairs remained empty. I had baked a cake in the afternoon. Simple chocolate with buttercream, the kind Anna used to smear across her cheeks when she was little. The candles stayed upright, their wicks untouched. I kept staring at them, foolishly waiting for a chorus of "Happy Birthday" that I already knew would never arrive. I walked from room to room, carrying a glass of red wine I barely sipped. The silence had weight. It pressed against my chest harder than any night shift at the hospital ever had. In those long years as a nurse, when I stumbled home at dawn and collapsed on the sofa still wearing scrubs, I told myself it was worth it. Anna's tuition was covered, her violin lessons paid, her future kept open. I had sacrificed birthdays before, but never like this. Never because she chose someone else's mother over me. I sat at the table and traced the frosting's ridges with the back of a fork. The sweetness clung to the metal, but I couldn't bring myself to taste it. My stomach had turned against me. Somewhere beyond the sliding glass doors, the ocean whispered in its patient rhythm, as though mocking my stillness. The phone sat face down beside the untouched cake. I half expected it to light up, for Anna to reconsider, to burst through the door with laughter and apologies. Instead, it stayed dark. Midnight crept closer. I blew out the candles myself, smoke curling like questions I had no answers for. I gathered the plates back into the cupboard, one by one, and the clink of porcelain was the only sound marking the end of my birthday. When I carried the empty cake stand to the sink, I told myself this was the loneliest celebration I would ever allow. Tomorrow, something had to change, even if I didn't yet know what form it would take. The next evening, The house still smelled faintly of frosting and burnt wicks. I was rinsing the last dish from the abandoned birthday dinner when the phone rang again. My first thought was that Anna had come to her senses, that she would offer more than a cupcake apology. But the voice on the other end belonged to a man I hadn't spoken to in years. Mr. Reynolds, my sister's attorney. Mrs. Hale, he said, clearing his throat. I hope I'm not disturbing you at a late hour. His tone carried formality, but underneath was something else, almost excitement. He told me the probate for my sister Clara's estate had finally settled. Clara and I had drifted apart when she married into wealth, living a life of art galas and European summers while I worked double shifts. Still, she had remembered me. Mr. Reynolds explained that she had left me her beachside property in Santa Monica, a sprawling home that sounded more dream than memory, and a trust fund that would pay me $40,000 each month for as long as I lived. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles whitening. The faucet ran, spilling water onto a dish until it overflowed, but I couldn't move to stop it. He repeated the figures, the details of the trust, the address of the property. Each word felt like it belonged to someone else's story, not mine. When I finally hung up, my body trembled with a cocktail of disbelief and fear. I wasn't thinking about yachts or diamonds, or even the relief of never working again. What pressed against me hardest was the thought that, for the first time, I had power that couldn't be dismissed or overlooked. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on the same striped towel from the day before and opened the door. There stood Anna, holding a single cupcake in a plastic container, her smile too bright, too rehearsed. Behind her, the night air carried the sound of waves, steady and unstoppable, just like the change already rolling toward us. The porch light threw a pale glow over Anna's face, and for the first time I noticed how restless her eyes were. She thrust the cupcake forward like a peace offering, a candle already pressed into its frosting. "Happy birthday, Mom," she said, her voice sugar-sweet but frayed around the edges. I stepped aside and let her in. The kitchen was still warm from the call I had just finished. Though she didn't yet know how drastically my world had shifted, she set the cupcake on the counter and tried to laugh, a little too loudly, as if noise could fill the space left empty the night before. Then her phone buzzed in her purse. She glanced at the screen, and her smile flickered. Curiosity pricked me. But before I could ask, she caught sight of the envelope on the table, the one with the attorney's letter. Her hand hovered near it, her brows knitting. "What's this?" she asked. I answered simply, "It's about Aunt Clara's estate, the house in Santa Monica, the trust fund." I kept my tone level, but the words seemed to thrum through the room like a low drumbeat. Her eyes widened, then darted back to me. "Wait, you mean you inherited all that? The house on Ocean View Drive?" I nodded once. Silence stretched between us, heavy and sharp. For years, I had been the one reaching, giving, making do. Now, for the first time, she looked at me as though I held the upper hand. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. Her cheeks colored, and she reached for the cupcake again, as though that small gesture could undo everything. I picked up the towel from the counter and folded it carefully. "Anna," I said quietly, "thank you for coming by, but I think you should go for tonight. We'll talk another time." Her lips parted in protest, but the words never came. She gathered her purse, and when the door shut behind her, the house no longer echoed with emptiness. It pulsed with the unfamiliar weight of choice, and I knew nothing between us would be the same again. 2 weeks later, I stood on the balcony of the Santa Monica house, the sea breeze lifting the hair from my temples. The home didn't feel like a prize so much as a reset button. Its whitewashed walls and wide windows bore none of my past struggles. Here, The ocean's rhythm became my own, steady and unhurried. The first night I slept there. I woke before dawn and walked barefoot across the cool hardwood floors. I brewed coffee in the oversized kitchen, marveling at how quiet contentment could be. For decades, every morning had begun with alarms and schedules, with rushing to catch buses or clock in at the hospital. Now, the day unfolded without command. I began volunteering at the local library, reading picture books to children whose parents worked late shifts. Their little hands tugged at my sleeve, their questions tumbling over each other. I felt a tenderness I thought had gone dormant, and it filled a part of me that had gone hollow on my birthday night. I also started a modest scholarship fund at the community college for nursing students. Each check I signed reminded me of who I had once been and how far that persistence had carried me. Yet even as the waves steadied me, the hollow echo of Anna's voice lingered. I would catch myself setting 2 plates instead of 1, imagining her across from me. I would wonder if she ever thought about the words she had spoken, wishing another woman had raised her. One evening, as I closed a children's book and watched the last family leave the library, I realized something. My life no longer revolved around being chosen or rejected. For the first time, I was choosing myself. Still, a quiet ache threaded through the contentment. Love for a child doesn't dissolve. It waits, patient and bruised, for a chance to be honored again. That night, I stood on the balcony, the horizon painted in twilight, and whispered to the wind, "I'm not done being a mother, but I'll never be invisible again." I hadn't expected to see her there. One late afternoon, as the sky turned copper and the waves hissed against the sand, a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. From it stepped Diana Whitmore, Anna's mother-in-law, the woman for whom the $20,000 ring had been purchased. She wore pearls even in daylight, her posture rigid, her gaze sharp as glass. "Margaret," she greeted, her voice low and commanding. I thought it was time we spoke. I led her onto the patio overlooking the beach. She studied the horizon before turning to me, eyes narrowing as though measuring the house itself. "This place suits you. I imagine Anna must be surprised." Her words dripped with something more than curiosity. They carried the weight of competition, as if she had been dethroned by my sudden inheritance. I folded my hands in my lap, refusing to be baited. Diana sighed, finally letting the mask slip. "I pushed her," she admitted. "I wanted to keep her close. Money has a way of binding people. Margaret, I didn't expect she'd sacrifice you for me." Her tone softened, but the pride was still there, hiding under each syllable. I met her eyes. "Respect isn't bought, Diana. It can't be wrapped in velvet and slipped on a finger. It's earned, and it's fragile. You've taught her to confuse control with care." She bristled, the pearls at her throat catching the last light of day. For a moment, she looked less like the polished matriarch and more like a woman aware of her own cracks. She gathered her purse, rose without another word, and walked back toward her car. When the engine faded down the street, I leaned against the railing. My hands were steady, my pulse calm. For once, I hadn't swallowed the hurt or shrunk under comparison. I had spoken the truth plainly, and it stood between us like a wall Diana could no longer climb. The tide rolled in, strong and certain, and I knew the next conversation would not be with her, but with the daughter caught in both our shadows. It was nearly a week after Diana's visit when Anna finally appeared at my door again. The evening light was soft, painting the walls gold as I folded laundry in the living room. A hesitant knock broke the quiet. When I opened the door, she stood there without makeup, her shoulders slumped, her eyes red-rimmed. "Mom," she whispered, almost as if the word itself hurt. "Can I come in?" I nodded, stepping aside. She perched on the edge of the sofa like a child waiting for permission. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse until the leather groaned. "I messed up," she said. "I thought giving Diana that ring would prove I belonged, that I was good enough to stand in her world, but instead, I just erased you." Tears blurred her mascara, and she swiped at her cheeks. Embarrassed. "I don't even recognize myself. I traded my own mother for approval that doesn't mean anything." Her words landed heavy. For years, I had dreamed of hearing her admit even a fraction of this. I lowered myself into the chair across from her, folding my arms, letting silence stretch. "Finally," I said. "Anna, you wounded me, not just with that call, but with what it revealed, that you thought love had to be purchased, that I wasn't enough unless measured in carrots and cash. That's not how I raised you." She met my gaze, desperate. "I know. And I don't want to keep being that person. Please, tell me there's still a way back." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "There is, but it won't be easy. You'll have to show me. Not with gifts or quick apologies, but with choices that prove I'm your mother and not an afterthought." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. For the first time in months, I saw the girl I had raised flicker back into view. The room fell quiet except for the waves muffled beyond the windows. I knew nothing was fixed yet, but a door had cracked open. Whether she would walk through it was entirely her decision. The first test came sooner than either of us expected. A week later, Diana hosted one of her elaborate luncheons at the country club, a gathering where appearances mattered more than the food itself. Anna had always rushed to those invitations, eager to sit among polished silverware and careful smiles. But that morning, she called me instead. "Mom, how are you feeling? You sounded tired yesterday," she said. I admitted I'd caught a chill from the sea breeze. "Nothing serious, just enough to make the house feel drafty." She hesitated, then confessed. "I'm supposed to be at the club in an hour. But I don't want to go. I'd rather bring you soup, if you'll let me." Her voice cracked on the last words. I told her I'd love the company. When she arrived, her arms were full of groceries, chicken broth, carrots, celery, and fresh thyme. She chopped vegetables in my kitchen, humming under her breath, the same tune she'd practiced on the violin as a child. I sat at the table wrapped in a blanket, watching her move with an ease that felt both familiar and new. At one point, her phone buzzed. I saw Diana's name flash across the screen, followed by 3 messages. Anna silenced it without reading. She set the phone face down and stirred the pot, steam rising between us. "I know this doesn't fix everything," she said softly, "but I want you to know where I stand." The soup filled the house with warmth, but it was her choice, the refusal of Diana's world for an afternoon, that truly wrapped me. For the first time, her actions spoke louder than her apologies. Meanwhile, word reached me through a neighbor who also belonged to the club. Diana had spent the luncheon flashing her empty wrist, bitterly recounting the cost of generosity. It seemed her grip on control was loosening. As I tasted Anna's soup, rich and simple, I realized healing doesn't arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes it's served steaming in a chipped bowl, carried by the hands of the child you thought you had lost. The following weekend, Anna suggested we have dinner together. I agreed, though I insisted it be at my place. I wanted to see whether she would accept a meal on my terms, without the shine of chandeliers or menus heavy with French words. She arrived in jeans and a cardigan, her hair tied back simply. I cooked roast chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes, and green beans, food that carried the comfort of Sunday evenings long ago. The table was set for 2, candles flickering low, the ocean's hum beyond the glass doors. Halfway through the meal, she cleared her throat. "Diana invited us on a yacht trip next month," she said carefully. "She said it would be a gesture. To smooth things over." I laid down my fork. "And what do you want?" Anna stared at her plate, then met my eyes. Part of me thought it might make everything easier if I went, but the truth is, I don't want more jewelry or boat rides. I just want things to be right with you. Her honesty cut through me. For years, I had longed for her to speak in her own voice rather than echoing Diana's. I reached for my glass of water, steadying myself. "Then let's be clear. I don't need smoothing over. I don't need diamonds or yachts. What I need is presence, respect, and truth. Can you give me that?" She nodded, tears bright in her eyes. And when her phone buzzed on the table, Diana's name glowing against the screen, she pressed the button and silenced it. The act was small, but it landed like thunder. For the first time in months, I exhaled without bitterness. I felt the walls of mistrust crack just enough for light to slip through. When we cleared the plates together, Anna lingered by the sink, her sleeve brushing mine. "I want to start over," she whispered. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the dishes clink gently in the basin and thought, maybe this is what a beginning feels like. The days stretched longer as summer deepened, and I found myself waiting for the quiet hour when the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in molten colors. One evening, Anna joined me on the balcony. She carried 2 mugs of tea, setting one beside me before sinking into the chair across from mine. The ocean below thundered, each wave crashing in rhythm with my heartbeat. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy like it used to be. It felt like an empty canvas, waiting. Finally, Anna broke it. "I don't need that ring," she said, her voice trembling. "It didn't mean love. It was just proof I was chasing, proof I never needed. What I need is you, Mom." Her words pierced deeper than the sting of her earlier betrayal. I stared out at the endless water, blinking back tears that had waited too long to fall. She leaned forward, desperate. "I can't erase what I did, but I can change who I am. If you'll let me." I reached across the small table, laying my hand over hers. Her skin was warm, pulsing with the same blood I had once carried inside me. The ocean roared beneath us, like an audience too vast to ignore. "You hurt me, Anna," I said softly, "but you are still my daughter. Love doesn't vanish. It bends, it bruises, but it waits for the chance to be honored again. Don't waste that chance." She nodded quickly, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time in years, I saw her stripped of pretense. No pearls, no polish, just the girl I raised standing raw before me. We sat together as the sky bled into night, holding hands while the waves swallowed the sun. It wasn't forgiveness wrapped in ribbon, nor a full repair of what was broken. It was something quieter, sturdier, a bridge beginning to form over water that had nearly drowned us both. Autumn arrived with cooler nights, and I decided it was time to open my doors again. Not for grandeur, not for spectacle, but for something honest. I invited a few neighbors from the library, 2 of the students I sponsored at the community college, and of course, Anna. The dining room glowed with candlelight, the smell of roasted chicken and apple pie drifting through the air. Anna came early to help set the table. She moved quietly, placing forks and glasses with a care that reminded me of when she was little, tugging at my sleeve to show me she could help like a grown-up. This time, she didn't need to announce it. Her actions said enough. When the guests arrived, the house filled with laughter that bounced warmly off the walls. Anna slipped a small box into my hands before dessert. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with tiny letters, "For the woman who raised me." My breath caught, not from the gift's value, but from its truth. Later, as the evening wound down, a letter was delivered. It was from Diana. Her handwriting was neat, almost fragile. She wrote that she had begun therapy, that she recognized the harm she had caused by measuring worth in jewels and appearances. She asked for the chance to be better, not as a rival, but as a person. I folded the letter and set it aside. It wasn't absolution, but it was a step. As I stood in the doorway saying goodnight to my guests, Anna lingered by my side. She squeezed my hand once, firmly, as though anchoring herself to me. For the first time in a long while, I felt a birthday wish fulfilled, not in riches or recognition, but in the steady hum of belonging that carried us into the night. In the weeks that followed, the house by the ocean became more than an inheritance. It became a mirror. Each morning, as the tide swept in and out, I thought of the years I had measured my worth in the eyes of others, my patients, my colleagues, and most painfully, my own daughter. I had given until my hands were raw, believing love required endless sacrifice. What I had never learned until now was that love also requires boundaries, the quiet insistence that we deserve respect. Anna came by often, not with jewelry or grand gestures, but with small acts that stitched us back together. She watered the flowers on the balcony, helped me carry groceries, and sometimes just sat with me as we listened to the sea. I no longer looked for perfection in her. Instead, I looked for effort, and for the first time in years, I saw it shining through. Diana's letter stayed folded in my desk drawer. I didn't rush to respond, but I held on to it, a reminder that even those who live behind polished walls can recognize their cracks. Whether or not she changed was not mine to control. What mattered was that I no longer allowed her shadow to define my place in Anna's life. On my 66th birthday, I set the table again, this time with no fear of empty chairs. The laughter of neighbors and students filled the air. Anna by my side, steady and present. I realized then that healing had not erased the pain of that night a year earlier, but it had transformed it into something I could stand on, a foundation built not on apology alone, but on growth. When I blew out the candles, I didn't make a wish. I didn't need to. The lesson had already settled inside me. A mother's worth is not measured by what she gives away, but by the dignity she chooses to keep. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.